People always say that you have to have money to make money, and that there's an extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So how is it that investors like us, who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us? That has always been the big question, and this podcast reveals the answers. I am Carrie Like, and this is the Investor Warrior. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Investor Warrior Show. And today, me and Danielle are in the office today together, which doesn't happen very often these days.
Rare.
You live here, but I live not here anymore.
I have a couple addresses.
So it's been nice to be back in the office. And today we have David Dummermuth with us. Hey, David.
How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us today.
Cleveland, Ohio.
From Cleveland. Woo!
Yeah, it's cold outside.
Yeah. You guys didn't win that. Were we watching the game?
That was Ohio State. We're not
Ohio
going to talk
State.
about it.
Oh, God. Sorry. Yeah, that was a really good game, though.
So, yeah, but this is near and dear to my
Way
heart.
to bring in the new year.
Uh-huh.
Ohio State.
That's it. So,
Okay, David is from Ohio, and he is a real estate entrepreneur. Danielle and I have known you, David, for a few years now. I met you back in Tucson 2 years ago, year and a half ago. It was 2 years ago, yeah. And so I've gotten to see your journey, which has been really exciting. David is an entrepreneur. He's a pilot. He's a lead project manager.
it's exciting. Can't wait to
He's
get to that.
What other roles do you play? You're a dad.
Yeah, husband, father, and we try to do a bunch of stuff with the young adults, the youth in our community. So
Very
Say
cool.
mentor.
at least once a month, we're doing something like that.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, we'll have to talk a little bit more about that. But the reason why we wanted to bring you on the show for many reasons, but one of the things that we've been exploring on the new year is triumphant comebacks. And so last episode we did Howie, and this episode we get to have you on because you presented at a real estate event recently.
That I was fortunate enough to be at. So
Yeah.
it was
I was not there, but
mind-blowing.
Danielle came back and was like, oh my God, you should have been there for David's presentation. It was amazing. Do you know he's been wiped out like 5 times? And I was like, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. No, I don't know that. And so I don't know a lot of your story, but I do
Sure.
know you're an amazing pilot and just a hardworking, ambitious entrepreneur, which is why you were at that real estate event presenting and sharing information with others, because you obviously have a tremendous vault of wisdom that you've acquired over these experiences of getting wiped out, because failure is our best teacher, right?
Yes, that's true.
So the part that, and David is so humble. I don't want to skip over this part. So when I came back and told Carrie about the experience that we had out when we were in Park City, I said, and by the way, David had the coveted last spot, which is near and dear because Carrie's also presented and had the last spot. So that's like in and of itself a true honor.
They always save the best for last, I think.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. Well, you wanted to start out.
I
You
wanna
had a
play a
question. Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
So David,
We tend to use the same. We talk a lot
We do.
at the same time and say the same things.
we do.
So
It's a habit.
I'll just jinx you right now.
All right. So we play a game with us to get started before we kind
Sure,
of.
go ahead.
All right. So I was thinking triumphant comeback, started thinking of superheroes. So here's my question. We play with the kids a
This
lot.
is our favorite topic of
It's-
the
It really is.
in our
So,
household.
Would you rather?
Oh, this
be-
is a would you rather.
Yeah, it's a would you
Oh my
rather.
God, my kids play this all the time. Would you
Uh-huh.
rather?
Would
And then
you
they give
rather.
us 2 really bad scenarios that we have to choose from. I hope this
Yeah.
isn't it.
Oh gosh, if you give us neither, like we might as well just not even like do this podcast. So, all right. So would you rather be for the superhero, the Rocketeer, or
Who's the Rocketeer?
oh my gosh,
Oh my
David, do you know who the
God.
Rocketeer is?
Yeah, I mean, I got to think back a bit for that one.
Oh, come on, you guys.
We need someone a little more traditional here.
No, there's a reason why I picked the Rocketeer.
Okay, Rocketeer.
Okay, the
describe
Rocketeer.
us the Rocketeer.
All right, so the Rocketeer. The story was based in the 1930s. I believe it was 1938.
Oh, that's why we don't know about the Rocketeer.
That was the setting. It came out in the 90s.
Okay.
It came out in the 90s. It was set right before World War II.
Okay.
And it was this handsome young hotshot
Okay.
who was trying to win the girl, and he found this like jetpack. I think his name was Clint. He found this jetpack, and it helped
Oh.
him skyrocket, and it helped him fly. He was like the man that could fly.
Okay,
all right?
I kind of
So-
do remember this.
He ends up saving the day, winning
Okay.
the girl.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Okay.
would you rather be the Rocketeer, or I mean, you can pick a modern day.
I can.
You can
Oh,
make whoever.
I was thinking like Marvel.
That's fine, Marvel.
Oh, okay. Or what's our kids? My kid's favorite is probably Iron Man.
All right.
Yeah. Iron Man sacrificed himself. Or who was it? Spider-Man or Iron Man that sacrificed himself? Iron Man sings a song to Spider-Man. That's our favorite song.
Yeah,
It's
you said
Iron
that.
Man
We were
sacrifices
painting.
himself to Spider-Man because they're good friends and they want to save the world.
So that was a really roundabout way of asking. So let's try to
Would you
clean this
rather?
up. David, would you rather be the Rocketeer superhero or
Iron Man.
Well, I think I'd be the Rocketeer.
Woo!
I
Okay.
thought that was
All
going
right.
to go the other
All right,
direction.
because
Because I don't think Iron Man, on the Rocketeer movie, he gets to find the magic of relationship.
Mm.
And Iron Man sort of lives a lonely life. He's got his, what's the lady that he's got, Pepper or something like that is his assistant.
I don't know Iron Man's life that well.
Yeah. But
Cameron,
Iron Man's a bit of a player, and I don't think he ever tasted the magic of committed relationship.
Interesting. Okay, so relationships.
okay. Well, hey, thanks. All right. So that's
That leads us
springboard.
into
That's springboard because it is superheroes and it is relationships. And I think that David, kind of setting the context for your story and
Yeah.
how you even, in order to have a triumphant comeback, there has to be turmoil and pivots and values.
Sure, there was
and
a
things
lot
like
of
that.
relationships made through those. So if you could just start from like, how did you begin in real estate? And
Oh, wait. More than that.
oh God,
More
Go
than
back,
that. We
okay.
got to look at it like,
I'm gonna
okay.
reverse back.
So David's an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an
Yes.
entrepreneur. So we've got to think now.
Were you once not an entrepreneur?
Yes, I was. I originally was not.
Okay.
And he's also
I think I always was in here,
There it is. Yeah.
but I don't think that was fully recognized right away. It took me a while.
So what did you do before entrepreneur world?
Well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Isn't
Yeah,
that-
I mean, I grew up in a family. My parents immigrated from Germany right off the boat. So they were hardworking, dedicated, just really disciplined people, and they had to learn the language. They had to do a lot of things that you and I. They had their own set of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up in a family where it was like, get educated, get a job,
Mm-hmm.
put your money in a big 401k, have the company take care of you with pensions, and that's go for it. That's what you need to do.
Okay.
And so I grew up learning that method, and so I plugged into that originally, kind of a little bit kicking and screaming. But that was the only path I knew. I didn't have anybody saying there was another way to do it.
You mean that's not the recipe for
Okay.
success for everybody?
So
That's-
how long were you in that job? What job was it?
Well, I was flying. I got through all my flight ratings, and I was,
flying.
I
So
was
you
headed.
started off as a pilot.
Yeah, I was headed to the
I
airline.
didn't know that. So you've been doing it for quite a while.
Yeah. I got into. I did all the ratings. I did the flight instruction for a while. I went into the corporate flying, and
Okay.
then the end of that path would have ends up for a lot of people in the airlines.
Yeah. And so were you you flew commercial?
Well, people confuse the term. Commercial is flying for hire. Airline transport pilot is what most people think of commercial. So
Mm-hmm.
in the pilot world, commercial doesn't mean airline, but
Okay.
for most people, when they say commercial, yeah, it's
Okay,
airline.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first love, right? And then you were doing that for a while, but then you were met with a time that we all remember.
Yeah, so I wanted to do that. I started to phase into doing that a little, like a small commercial or a small sort of charter operation, flying executives in smaller aircraft and jets and things like that. And so it was moving that direction, and that's what we were building. And that's when 911 happened.
Mm.
Yeah.
So change the landscape of aviation as a whole, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean, basically something around 60% of all pilots were unemployed.
Wow.
And
Was
they
that
all,
you also?
it's a supply and demand thing that just went like this.
Yeah.
And the outlook was very bleak for
Yeah.
pilots.
Well, and you were newly married with a
Yeah.
family. So
We were on our honeymoon when 911 happened.
Oof.
oh, I didn't realize
Wow, that's
that.
a memorable honeymoon.
Oh, that was a fresh.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did that lead you? How did that event impact you?
Well, we the flying dried up. It was like somebody turned off a light switch
Overnight.
and the first thing that happens when the economy gets tight, which may happen moving forward, you know, who knows.
Sure.
But the first thing that happens is the accountant says to the business owners, cut your expenses. And so corporate air travel just look, if you're going to pay $30,000 to go on a trip, or you're going to pay $800 for a Delta ticket, which one you want to do?
Sure.
And so the first thing that happens is all the accountants and the bookkeepers say, you know, cut your expenses and get rid of the jet, get rid of all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that whole world crumbles pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you adjusted, though, as any entrepreneur at heart, like you said earlier, adjusted.
Yep.
And you found yourself at the time, that's when you started doing the drywall and construction and things like that, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't have any real understanding of what an entrepreneur was. I mean, I heard the phrase and I had some general understanding of it, but what it really is, I didn't know. So as I was looking to do something else in aviation, I just got a job with a friend of the family. So they had a construction business, and they said, well, you know, we can take you on at X per hour, and you can look at finding something else in aviation. So 1 month became 2 months, 2 months became 6 months. You know, next thing I know, I was there a year and a half, and
like talk me through what's running through your mind, because you had the aviation, that was crash number one, like wipeout, dream, everything you thought it was going to be, no more. So now you're, in a way, the family members that didn't understand the entrepreneur life are saying, oh, come over here, that 401k, this is safe, you know, conform where you're taken care of. So kind of, you know, what's going on in your mind, because how do you get yourself out of that?
Well, lots of crying, lots of saying, what did I do wrong? Where did I mess up? I mean, you go from the front seat of a Learjet to the lowest guy on the construction crew who gets assigned carrying the buckets of mud and sanding drywall and doing stuff like this. And they're saying, come on, you know, speed up there, slowpoke, you know, what's wrong with you? And you're thinking to yourself, as you're sanding or doing whatever, full of dust, you're going, what happened? How did I go from the front seat of Learjet to this?
Interesting.
It's a terrible mind bender.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. Well, it's very humbling, and it's a real big test to your emotional state and how you can handle it.
Emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strong person.
But it sounds like at the time you got to do what you got to do, right? You've got to.
I mean, you look back and you think, oh, it was one of the greatest things that happened to me. But in the moment, you know, it is not.
Sure.
I have a real heart for people that are going through things like this, and they say, "Oh, my world is crashing and burning," and mine was too.
Yeah.
So you just, life comes at you, and it can really deflate you pretty quick.
So how long were you in that job for?
So just under 2 years.
Okay. And so during that time, you stayed in the same position doing the same work?
We renovated houses, so
Mhm.
I would do things from new kitchens to flooring to painting
Okay.
to and so it was a real good crew. We did a wide variety of projects,
Mhm.
and what ended up happening was it built a confidence in me
Mhm.
that if I was to buy a house, I could pretty much do the project myself.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
you learned the skills, the hands-on skills.
Literal
Yeah.
on the job training.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Mhm.
So what then brought you out of that job to the next phase of your life? What happened?
I hated it.
That's a really good reason.
Oh, the pain.
So you never learned to love it.
No, I hated it, and I would look at the top guy there, earned a few bucks more than I did, let's say $10 an hour more than I did, and
Yeah.
he was just about 60, early 60s, and his his competence and ability and physical stature was starting to go downhill,
Yeah.
and so even though he had skill and experience, he really didn't want to help train the other people, the young people coming up, because they were a threat to his position. And
Yeah.
so in the corporate world or in the contracting world or in whatever, you have this weird dynamic of the people above you don't really want to help and train you
Mm.
because they kind of, it's a threat to their position.
Mhm.
Right.
And so as I looked at him, he wasn't very happy. He wasn't very excited to be going to work every day. And I actually looked at him and said, well, that's going to be me if I stay here.
Right.
That's me at 61.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of those conversations too, I know you had with Kim, who I've also had the privilege of meeting. I think you've met Kim also,
your
right?
wife.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in Vegas.
I
your
have
wife.
actually. Oh yes,
Yep,
I did meet
we were in
Kim in
Vegas
Vegas.
together.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of those conversations, being had there, and in the trajectory of life, because that's a you're forever in partnership. So when you made that decision, that on the job training, isn't that when you kind of real estate fell into your lap? And it's funny, almost every real estate entrepreneur I talk to, me included, is you don't choose real estate chooses you. And it seems that in this is kind of how it happened for you, because you had that training, you're having those conversations with your wife Kim, you're looking at your life together, and
moving forward.
you make the decision to start your own company, right?
Yeah. So Kim, my wife, she's a sweetheart. And so as we were going through this, she said some things like, well, maybe I'll do a little something on the side to support the household and so forth. And so she sort of looked around and figured out what can she do from home. And she ended up coming across sort of a network marketing company, looked into it a little bit. And that company had some CDs that they handed out to the people that were considering doing this. And one of those CDs was Robert Kiyosaki. And so she brings that home, and she says, well, I've got some things here to do. And the kids kept her busy and whatever. And I popped in this CD and I listened to it, and it felt like here's somebody talking about something that's always been in here, but they're defining it, they're giving it life, they're talking about like
Words to it.
they understand it, and why didn't I ever hear this kind of stuff before? And this seems a whole lot more like me, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm liking what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So you were pulled into what they were saying.
Yeah.
And then ultimately was pulled out of the business that you were in into something different.
Yeah, I was pulled into the mindset that there was a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I started, I said, okay, well, if I start a real estate group, and I buy the properties, worst case scenario, because I was still terrified and
Sure.
unsure, but worst case scenario would be I could work on the houses ourselves,
Yeah.
myself. So
Yeah, now
even
that
if
you
I,
can skill.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Which
even
is
if I bought 2 or 3 houses and
win-win.
worst case scenario, I could fix them and sell them, and I wouldn't be any worse off than where I was.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you started your own investment company, and then where did it go from there?
Well, this was in 2005, and so we were buying homes, we were selling homes, we were renovating homes, and one of them worked well, 2 of them worked even better, 3
Yeah.
of them worked even better. So it was like,
Sure.
okay, well, why not do like 20 of them or
Mhm.
25?
Sure.
And so we and this is important here because I had people that I come across in the business that said things like, David, you might want to slow down a bit because
Mm.
the
Mm,
market's like screaming hot. And I would say, oh, that's nice. I appreciate you
sure.
caring for me. And then I would go home and I would say, I don't know if I believe what that guy's saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just continued to build it and continued to leverage. And next thing you know, the whole banking meltdown happens, and I'm sitting on all these properties, half of them mid construction, et cetera.
Right.
And it was just bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is number 3. We're at 2008. Keep us going.
Well,
We're at
yeah.
2022 now.
So the flying charter business was the first one. 2008 happened, and then we built the real estate company, or excuse me, that 2001 happened for the flying. Then we
Yeah.
built the real estate company in 2008. The banking crisis wiped it out,
Yeah.
and of course I had
I
many.
mean, it's always, I've met so many people that
Mhm.
had a lot of hardship through that period of time. How did you get by, and how did you pull yourself out of that situation emotionally, mentally, financially? I mean,
I would, and this is going to sound weird, but I would come home uh, feeling like the greatest failure.
sure.
Work all day to just try to put out fires,
Yeah.
and I would have my little kids run and jump into my arms and tell me I was the greatest hero and the greatest thing in the world, and my wife would give me a kiss on the cheek and say, "You're wonderful," and I would say, "At least, at least, at least I have this."
That's awesome. You know what?
Mm,
Isn't that honestly the greatest triumph of all? Because if your heart's not right and the family pieces aren't right, oftentimes we get so distracted on, well, we should be here, we should be doing this, we should have greater success. What truly is that measure? So
Yeah,
yeah.
because you lose a lot of friends.
Sure.
They're not really. I mean, you lose. Everyone wants to do business with you when you're doing well. Your life
Mhm.
insurance agent, your real estate brokers, your bankers. They're the worst, man. They give you an umbrella when the sun is shining, and then they demand it back when the rain comes.
Mhm.
So everybody wants to work with you when you're doing well. I had someone tell me once, when you're doing well, you're not doing as well as you think, because the feedback you get from everybody is they all want to work
Yeah.
with you. So,
Right.
so you actually feel like you're doing better than you are. And when you're down in the dumps and you're doing bad, you're not really that down in the dumps, except
Mhm.
everybody pulls away from doing business with you because they have got other clients that have more clout or more money. And so,
Yeah.
so they end up working with those other people, and you see your world kind of dry up around you, and you think, oh man, I'm terrible. And
Yeah.
so if you can remain balanced, I would say that's a big one.
That's a big takeaway.
Well, and fine, like I think Howie and I talked about on the last episode, when he had the major events happened in his life, he had to find something to anchor onto. And it sounds like for you anchored onto your family, the relationships that you had with your kids and your wife. That
Yeah.
was your anchor. And And when you have something that's working well in your life, like you have to hold on to that and work at that until all the other pieces improve with it.
Yeah, and so that was a big one. That was a huge one. That was probably the biggest one, was that when you're going through a bankruptcy and you've got creditors calling you, and you've got 16 calls a day,
Yeah.
is all negative, or how we're going to fix this, or how we're going to put out this fire, or any number of these things. It gets even harder when you had investor money in the game,
Yeah.
and people start to call you and say, well, where are the funds? And I said, well, it's tied up in this project. We
Yeah.
can sell the project, we all win. We can't sell the project.
Mm.
It gets really tough, because
Yeah.
investing, managing other people's money can really be tricky. You really want to try to do that well in life,
Sure.
because they can get upset, and that's a tough one.
Right. Tougher than dealing with the financial. It's different when a financial institution is calling you, but then when your personal.
Yeah, I mean, you try to sell what you have and make them all whole,
Yes.
and then and go from there. But yeah, that's no easy thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. So the 2008 happened.
Mhm.
It obviously took a little while to unravel what you were working on there.
Mhm.
Where did you go from there? Where was your mind at too? Like, what were you thinking about for future moving forward?
Well, you kind of live every day at a time. So if you think of everything you have to do that month, it's way too overwhelming. So you kind of wake up and you say, all right, well, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do what I need to do. And I'm going to try to do the very best of the things I can control. And I'm going to try to not carry the burdens that I cannot control. I don't know where the market's going. I don't know what the banks are doing, but at least I can do what I can do.
Sure.
And so then you put your hand to the plow and you keep going. And every day you say to yourself, or I would say to myself, well, even though this is what I have and this is where I'm at, this is not who I am.
Mm.
So you just, it's almost like the invisible is more real than the visible, because the visible sucks.
Yeah.
And the invisible is who are you, and what are you capable of, and where are you going? Do you believe that more than the current state of affairs you're in?
Right. And I think so many of us can start to completely identify with our own situation. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you do a tailspin down into all these negative emotions, because your situation becomes who you are. And when you pair those together, now the situation and you suck. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
that's
mean, it's like
a terrible
even
place to be.
even if you go through a bad breakup or something, any of these difficult things, business can be like that. If you lose everything, you go, well, I kind of suck. Or you can say, that didn't work. What can I do better? What can I change?
Yeah.
And you got to believe that you are not the circumstances you are in.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think putting a word to it, the invisible, is another really good anchor to it. It's what you're made of at the end of the day and who you are. It's not necessarily the existential that's going on around you. It's what's on the inside. So I know you came out swinging then, because we did say 5, and that's number 3. So
Yeah.
from there.
Well, so at the time, my credit was destroyed and everything like that because of the banking. We had lines of credit, we had all kinds of stuff, and then the bank just turned those things off.
Yep.
And when they do that, they basically bankrupt you. If you have an operating capital and you have certain things that you have, and then they just turn the switches off and pull the rug out. I had a lot of things I could have done better, but it just ends things. And so, like if the government says, okay, your business is closed because you have to stay home because of our regulations, it's a danger to be out in public, and you have a restaurant that's been open for 30 years, all of a sudden you're done.
Yeah.
You're done. So that was hard. And so I had two choices: go back into flying, which wasn't looking very good, and be gone all the time as a father, as a new father, or get up and try real estate again. And so I believed in real estate, and I thought, okay, well, can I get a bunch of investors together that want to do this? I have some skills to offer, and they might have funds to put in, and maybe we can do this. And so the next portfolio I built was with investor money and investor credit and financing, and I was just a partner in it.
Okay. So I think, one of my questions would be, so you were going through bankruptcy at the time, is that correct?
Yeah.
You had. So your credit was shot. How did you put confidence in these investors for the second go around?
It's extremely difficult because if the question ever comes up of your track record or what you're currently working on or what do you have, you're just a deplorable mess, a catastrophe of projects.
Yeah.
And so you have to get a lot of rejection because you sit down and an intelligent investor will ask you, what have you done? What have you worked on?
Sure.
What do you have going on currently? How much skin in the game can you put in? Et cetera, et cetera. And so you have to be humble, and you have to go and you say, listen, here's what I was doing. Here's what I did. Here's how I lost everything. And here's what I'm going to do differently. And some people actually look at that and go, well, I'd rather invest with that guy because he's honest and he can learn and he can grow and change. And I found that there's a certain kind of investor that actually looks for people that have had failure and got up again, because that person knows that if they encounter failure or challenge, they'll step up to it and rise to the occasion. And it's not the greatest thing to invest with somebody that's never had to go through tremendous challenges, because they're untested.
Right.
They're untested and they just don't have the wisdom that you now have, because wisdom typically comes from experience, and wisdom typically comes from adversity and experience.
Yeah.
So you had that, plus just your honesty and candidness with people, I'm sure, built confidence in them. And I'm sure that also helped them to see that you were not that situation. You were someone apart from what happened.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy. A lot of people don't see that. Very few do.
Well, and so did you have to go through a lot of rejections?
Yeah.
Trying to find, so you had to be persistent and you had to.
I mean, everybody wants to invest in a stock when it's shooting up.
Sure.
Nobody wants to invest in it when it's at the bottom, but that's the best time.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you found a few people, obviously, who believed in you and your skills and capability. So where did you go from there?
So we bought a lot of properties. We renovated a lot of properties. We built another portfolio, and we were doing well. And then people have good intentions. They don't always see everything coming. And then the main investor that we had, whose name was on all the notes and the paperwork and so forth, because the banks were still giving out money, they were just very conservative. So we raised the capital for all the upfront money and the down payments and things like that, and then we had bank notes on the balances, and that investor had some big investments on the West Coast, and they took longer to collapse. They were a little more complicated, so they collapsed a year or two after 2008, so more like 10. And the the creditors came calling for anything and everything that was signed for by that individual. And so the creditors took back everything we built.
Wow. Okay.
So that time,
So this
a lot
is
of that
what,
was out of your control. Really.
2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where is your mind at, like, at this point with real estate? I'm curious.
So that's 2 real estates.
Well, we built it once and we built it again. So I start to think like, okay, well, I believe in this, but there's some elements that I didn't do correctly.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the drawing board. And
And so it was like, all right, my solution that I thought was best was I just won't have a partner. I'll just do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we built a portfolio of homes, probably 80 homes at that time. And that was just all with a private investor, a hard money lender type person.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that portfolio. That took a few years to build that portfolio. So
Yes.
you're probably looking at once probably we started building that one probably in 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we got that. I got that to about 80 homes.
Okay.
So it's a pretty substantial portfolio.
And do you still have that portfolio today?
No.
I thought we were on number 5.
That one's gone.
Is that number 5?
Oh,
Okay. What happened to that
our
one?
listeners are hanging on every word.
Which number?
I built that one, and what we did was at the time pricing was really low. So I would go to the banks and I would say, well, I want to buy this property here, and they would say, we would give them some ridiculous offer, like $30,000, and they would say, no, we're not going to take it. And then I'd say, well, next week tomorrow it's $29,000. and they would say, no, please, we'll take it, right? And so it was a very different world than it is right now as far as the banking goes. They were trying to get rid of all the stuff they had acquired from the meltdown.
Yeah.
And so we bought loads of properties, and it was all financed with money that was at 2 points and 15%. So it's very expensive money, but our acquisitions were so low relative to the rent rolls.
Right.
So if you're going to buy something that rents for $1,500 a month and you're only into it for $45,000, $50,000,
yep,
you can stomach
more the 15% and the 2 points. Yeah.
So the idea was, even though the money is expensive, let's buy as much as we can and build as much as we can, and then everything will sort of come back to normal, and we'll refinance it or sell it.
Yep.
And that was the theory.
Okay. Why did that not work out?
And without a partner, of course, right?
Of course, because we learned that in the last lesson of life. Oh my gosh. Okay, so what happened? I'm scared to.
So I was expanding so quickly. I could have built a little bit better systems on collecting rents and rent roll, and managing the books, and managing contractors. You have so many projects going, there's a little bit of money being lost here and there, and you don't see it unless you're really accurate with your systems. And so when you're building fast, it can be dangerous. So we built fast, and then I went to the hard money lender. This is probably one of my biggest mistakes. I went to the hard money lender and I said, I appreciate you working with me all these years. I've got a big bank lined up for a refinance, and I just wanted to thank you and appreciate working with you. And I probably won't be needing you, come 3, 4, 5 months from now. And I would be very careful to say that to any financial institution or person that's making a lot of money
on you,
with you and on you, because they might not want you to leave, and they can start to implement things which make it very difficult to leave.
So that was what happened.
Yeah, every 2 years I would renew my my loans with him. And so we had 2 years, every 2 years we renew, and we got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready to do this big refinance with the bank. And he said, well, David, I don't think we're going to give you another renewal this year. And I said, well, what's the reason? And, oh, well, this and that. So I just thought he would renew every 2 years because that's kind of what we had on a handshake and we had an agreement.
Yeah.
But there was nothing on paper saying he had to.
Okay.
And so he said, well, I think we're not going to renew and you're going to fall into penalties. So, our penalties are 1.5 per month interest.
Wow.
So that, you add that up times 12 plus the 15%, and you're right around 34% interest per year. So,
and when he said, we're not going to renew with you, at that point, why didn't you just say, okay, I'm refinancing?
Well, we were in the middle of a refinance, but these things are rather complicated because the refinance company has to do 80 appraisals.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do, they have to look at all your financials. They have to, there's a substantial amount of due diligence where some bank comes in and says, okay, we're going to give you X amount of millions for this portfolio, but we want to make sure that the value is there in case we have to take this back.
So you weren't yet going through that process yet, or you were still in the beginning stages of that process?
Yeah, we had the lender agreed to 3.6%, which was great at the time. And we were probably going to cash out a couple million. And then and the total payment of that was still less than what we were paying on the 15%.
Sure.
So the numbers worked, but you have to pay for 80 appraisals. Those are $500 a piece.
Yeah.
You got to pay for all this kind of stuff, and then you got to wait a few months while the bank says, okay, we've done everything we need to do to be satisfied.
Yep.
Right.
And so I was right in that process.
I see. Okay.
And so we went, all of a sudden I started paying 33% per month. And so my payment essentially doubled.
And were you negative cash flow at that point?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 33%. How you even make?
You think about it.
All of a sudden you were starting to refinance. You now became negative cash flow. This is obviously affecting the refinance.
Right. So you sit down with the bankers and you say, they say, give me an updated financials in the last 30, 60 days and show me what's going on, because you originally spoke with them 90 days ago and, everything's in process. It's all ready to happen. And then right before it happens, they say, let me get an update on your financials.
And then the financials don't look so good anymore.
Right. And then so they say, well, wait a second, what is this huge increase in expenses? And I said, well, glad you asked, because here's why. And this is precisely why I need this refinance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Say, well, what did the bank say?
They say, well, that's great, but, we have concerns. And I said, well, all these concerns go away when you refinance, because it's not maintenance. It's not property value. It's not maintenance. It's not management. It's interest.
Yeah.
But if you know anything about banks, they just, they don't like that.
Yeah.
And they don't have to give you the money.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, I don't think we're going to do this anymore.
Oh.
And so you start to scratch your head and you start to go, did the hard money lender know that?
Right.
Right. So now I'm stuck with him.
So now you're stuck with them. Now you're negative cash flow. So what do you do?
Yeah. So you try to solve the problem a different way. So you say, okay, what can I do? I sold 5 properties to this guy. I sold, 10 properties to this guy. And then much of it, you have to just figure out what you got to do. So I had to build my way out of, 60 homes maybe.
But these had equity. Yeah. The properties had equity in them at this point.
Yeah. And they were all rental based portfolios. So if you want to sell them to the retail market, at the time, the retail market wanted new cabinets, granite. So I'd take a renter that would leave.
Yeah.
And I would try to do this as quickly as possible because I'm negative cash. Every month I'm going down like crazy.
Yeah.
So I would try to do 2 or 3 or 4 at a time, and I would fix them up, put in new cabinets, granite, new carpet, everything, and I would sell it on the market, and I would not make anything, but it would leave the negative portfolio.
So you're literally just kind of digging yourself out of this negative.
And you go home at the end of the day, and you go, okay, today because you're buying and flipping houses the whole time to try to bring in money, right?
Right, sure.
And so you're doing this, and you've got 100,000 a month in interest or more. You've got 100,000 in payroll or more. You've got all this money going out, and at the end of the day, you're like trying to scrape together money to buy a milk.
Yeah, something doesn't add up. Oh my gosh, what am I? Another mind bender.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's interesting when
wondering how you're going to buy groceries.
Yeah. And so you just a lot of money moves through the system, and you're everyone is making money: appraisers, bankers, contractors, real estate agents, everybody. And you're like, okay, I'm building this, and everyone else is employed.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. And again, it's do you quit or do you build through it, right? So it took me about 4 years to empty every one of those properties off the portfolio.
And how were you making money? Like, how were you?
New projects.
Okay, so you were still
during that whole time. Yeah, we would find projects, we'd buy them, we'd fix them, we'd sell them. We'd buy them, we'd renovate them, we'd sell them, we'd make 50,000. But it would just go backwards into this big black hole.
It was basically just it was paying for your negative expenses.
Yep, and we ended up climbing out of it, and that was a good day when all that was going.
I'm sure, but in the middle of it, it can seem like, I can only imagine that you're in it for so long, and every day you come home and you're literally just trying to make it a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to have bought and sold hundreds of properties, and then your neighbor says to you, "Oh, Dave, I bought this house and I changed the paint carpet and I sold it and I made 30 grand. And boy, cheers. Real estate's a good thing to do."
Yeah.
And you're like, well, he's got, is he better than I am at this? What's going on?
Right. So it took you 4 years to basically unload all of those properties?
We're at 80, I think you said, right, David? 80 properties.
Yeah, and during that process, we flipped, dozens and dozens of homes. And during that process, we also bought a franchise because I kind of concluded that, maybe I need a little help with it.
Yeah.
Maybe I need some guidance. And so I thought, well, if you buy in a franchise, the mothership, they want all the little ships to succeed. They want everybody to succeed and do well. So maybe I can, find some sort of guidance from people that have done this. And so I bought into a house buying and selling franchise. And I thought, well, maybe they can see some of these pitfalls and some of these potholes.
Yeah.
And help me, because, you don't always see what's coming.
Right. So you have a little bit more support.
Yeah.
So did that,
without having a partner per se.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, franchise would still be mine independently, but I would have some guidance from above, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So how did that business go?
Well, it went all right initially, but I found out that they really don't want you to grow and improve.
Your foot soldier.
they only want you to grow and improve to buy a second franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So they only want you to implement whatever strategies make what they're doing more valuable and better.
Mm-hmm.
And the nature of expansion with them was the really successful guys, they own 3 franchises.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be one of them. But there was no desire for them to have me grow and expand and become all that I could be, or any of that kind of stuff. It was just, I was valuable in the regard to only how much I would help build franchises and promote other people to have franchises.
Sure. So it's still a fishbowl. You're never going to get it. It's a continual loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when I started to move into like larger projects or commercial things or any of that, it was real sticky. It was like they wanted commissions on everything, and they didn't want us to do any of that. Creative financing, no, our legal team doesn't like that, so don't do that, don't do this, don't do this. Just do this one little thing here. Make our kind of hamburger, and that's it.
Cookie cutter.
So there wasn't a lot of freedom. There was restrictions.
Yeah. And,
yeah. Which doesn't sound like you have your own business at that point. Sounds like you're working.
You can lean into certain things when you go through kind of a meltdown or you failure, or you lose anything, you say, oh, what can I do differently? And sometimes, you just try to figure out what would work better. And sometimes you discover what does, and sometimes you discover what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So did you end up exiting out of that franchise?
Yeah. I had it for 5 years, and then there was a required renewal if you wanted to keep it. And so I didn't renew, and it just expired.
And did you have a portfolio of your own at that point?
Yeah, we had quite a few homes, and of course we had a lot of money into the franchise, which just evaporated because if you don't renew, everything you have in there just disappears.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens to your portfolio? You get to keep the portfolio?
Well, yeah, you get to keep it, but at that point I was buying and selling more than actually holding.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah, we had a smaller portfolio at that time.
Got it. So are we on number 5? Was that number 5? I'm confused.
That was 5. Yeah, that was number 5.
Okay, so today,
present, we are
gosh.
moving
So
into
when
present
was that?
day.
When was that you exited? Was that
probably about 2 years ago?
Oh wow! So about when I met you, then.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think I met you in 2019. Was it that long ago?
Oh no.
2021.
So maybe in January of 21, because I met you in the summer of 21. So it would have been a few months.
So
after
that was exactly 2 years ago. I met you. Yeah. So what have you been doing since then?
All sorts of exciting things.
Yeah. So I think I was on the right track with wanting oversight and mentorship and experience, and that's kind of what the franchise concept I think was what I was looking for. And so I spent some time really thinking about, okay, at the time I was 44, and it was like, all right, I don't want to keep this roadmap, right? I want to do this right and do this well. And let's say I've got 20, 30 years left of doing this, right? What do I want to do? Who do I want to do it with? Because I learned that who you do stuff with is important. As a partnership situations I described, and then kind of what kind of real estate do I want to do, and all this stuff. And so I ended up searching long and hard for a mentor and somebody that was super experienced, was a great teacher, and then because some people are very experienced but they're not a good teacher.
Right.
Sure.
And then somebody that actually I could be friends with and develop a relationship, because I found in my life I would do much more for people that I cared about.
Yeah.
And sometimes that was the magic of the equation.
And up to this point, had you had, besides Robert Kiyosaki and his book, had you had any kind of mentor in real estate?
I had gone to many conferences. I had gone to commercial conferences, land conferences. I had gone to acquisition finance conferences, asset protection conferences. I had gone to all these kind of things and developed a fair amount of understanding of them. But I'd never really had sort of like a, how would you say, a coach.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the things that stuck out to me, David, is when you were presenting this summer, when we were together, you were talking about how just one of the lessons just really hit you, that in order to make things happen, you need to kind of really strip down, look internally, and get that, ask for that help, that coaching help, and then blend together what you're best at and what you're passionate about. Because even, and I don't want anyone that's listening to think that aviation has gone out the window for you, because anything but. Truly, you found a way to have that coaching aspect, to recognize the success and the experiences that you had from real estate and continuing to tweak those up, but then also blending aviation in that. So kind of, how did you figure that out, or come up with that secret magic to make this happen, and also become a mentor yourself? Because I know that you are. I've seen that in you, at different conferences that we've been at, and, with Josh, who I know is, a right hand wing to you, and others in your community.
Yeah. Well, I first of all, you have to be very open to listening and hearing some things. And so, I sat down with Greg. You guys know Greg, and he came over to Cleveland and worked with me, and we took. He sort of said, you got aviation over here, which you do 50% of the time, and you've got real estate over here. And he says, if you slide them together, have you ever thought about that? And I said, well, I never really have, because building hangars takes millions of dollars and all this sort of thing, and I don't have commercial construction experience in that regard. I flipped a lot of houses. But, so he said he really started to build in the mindset that perhaps, David, what you're thinking is incorrect, and that you do have a lot of connections, and you do have a lot of experience in real estate, and a big project like that is nothing more than a small project with a lot of zeros.
Right.
And so it begins with mindset, saying, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe there is something here. And so I started to talk with people in the aviation community about, if I built a hangar, would they want to keep their jet there? And next thing you know, you're talking to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 business owners that have jets, and they've got companies, and they do development, or they do real estate, or this guy builds hotels, or this lady develops whatever. And so all of a sudden you find this community of people.
Yeah.
And I had never thought that finding that community of people might come through aviation.
Interesting.
And so I ended up flying a lot of these people, and I ended up building some connections. And next thing you know, we were working on projects, 100 times the size of anything I'd worked on.
And so that's what you're doing now?
Yeah. So we're doing commercial developments. We're doing single story apartment developments, and
not just in Ohio. You're also, you've done a project here in Florida. Is it one project or two?
Well, we're in the process of working on a couple there. These they take a little bit longer. They take.
We know.
They take 24 months to get permission to do it. It takes 4 times longer to get permission to do it than actually do it.
Right.
But yeah, we have some connections. We have a gentleman we work with, and he's got 6,700 acres in Estero, Florida, near Fort Myers. So we want to build several projects within that planned unit. basically he's developing a whole region.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very
cool.
exciting.
Yeah.
Well, and that relationship, and and I think this will be another episode when we have like Triumphant Comebacks Part 2. Once some of those projects get finished. But that relationship, if I'm not misunderstanding, came from a flight that you were taking and a relationship that you made out of the blue, just being your normal
Yeah.
David self, right? Like you got
Mhm.
called in, like, here, man, I'll help you. I'll take you where you need to go. And then just doors started opening. So sometimes we want so hard for something to work out and to be successful rather than just being in the moment,
Yeah.
letting it happen for you and not getting in your own way. And that's something that even Carlos has told me repetitively: stop getting in your own way.
Yeah, that was a great story. I some of the things we learned about how to build business is incorrect, and some of the things are extremely valuable, and I think they're often missed. And one of the things is being a nice person to be around, and being the kind of person that other people want to be around,
Mhm.
and showing generosity and so forth. Because I have business guys that work on $200 million projects, and I'll talk to them about another gentleman, or it's another person that they may want to partner with, and they'll be looking for the integrity
Mhm.
and trustworthiness of that person above and beyond anything else,
Mhm.
because you're going to encounter 100 to 1,000 little details in a project. And is that other person going to work with you, going to be a good team player? Is that person going to understand? Is that person going to be easy to work with? Is that person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And so if there's 5 choices, they're going to choose the one that's actually fun to be around, reasonable, and
True to his word.
humble.
Yeah.
And so, interesting story. So I had a friend of mine that owns an airplane, and he said, I've got a guy that wants to use it, and he needs a checkout. Would you mind driving to the airport and giving him a checkout? I'll pay for you for the day. And I wanted to get out of the office and have a break. So I drove to that side of town, and we met, and I took him about an hour and a half flight, and ran him through the paces. And we had some fun talking, and I checked him out and signed the book, and so for the insurance and everything like that. He was a good pilot. And he said, well, what do I owe you for the day? And I said, oh, don't worry about it. We got to look out for each other, and maybe I'll take you to lunch sometime, or you'll find a way to, we'll see each other in the future, and we'll remember and have fun and smile and say, good to see you again. So he went off his way, and I went off my way.
Mm-hmm.
And about 30 days later, I get a phone call, and it says, hey, Dave, you remember me? You gave me that checkout in such and such airplane, 30 days ago. And I said, yeah, oh yeah, I remember you. And he said, well, I got a friend that needs to do some flying, and you fly the same kind of jet that he's got. So you think you could help us out? Now, he could have called like 20 different people.
Sure.
But he ended up calling me. And well, why is that?
Because you're a nice person. You built the relationship. You were genuine. Yeah.
And so I end up flying with this other gentleman. We go to Florida, we go to Key West, and it turns out he's the owner of a company that develops hundreds of thousands of units.
Mm.
I mean, he does about 80 homes a month and all kinds of stuff. So, here we are talking, and we start working together, and it all comes from what?
Relationships.
Yeah.
Relationship building. But back to the Rocketeer, it's
Rocketeer.
relationship building.
So I've found that some of the greatest things in business are not what everybody teaches.
Sure.
But some of the most valuable things are just being humble, working with people, being trustworthy, and keeping your word. And sure enough, people will want to work with you.
I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do here.
I am too. You guys are doing great work, and you're such an inspiration.
Yeah, truly. Thank you for coming on, David.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If people want to get in touch with you, where can they connect with you?
Well, email or text or phone call is probably the best 3 ways.
Okay, what's your email? And I'll put it up here on the screen.
So it's just my name, David Dummermuth. I'll give you my personal email. Just do daviddummermuth@yahoo.com. And
Yeah. Okay.
it's pretty straightforward. And then you can tell I've got a weird last name because everybody has to put something weird in their name, right?
Yeah.
David Dummermuth. Is that with 2 M's or
Yeah.
1?
2.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Two.
scroll this across the screen. And any other ways to reach you besides your email?
Yeah, I'll give you my phone number. I'll give you my personal phone number. It's 216
Uh-huh.
509
Okay.
3589.
I love that Cleveland representing 216. I haven't heard that in a long time.
There you go.
So-
Awesome. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what you guys probably don't realize that you have in common, the both of you.
David and I?
Yeah, besides being investor warriors, you
No.
guys are also both road warriors.
What do you mean?
David loves traveling
Do you?
with the family,
Oh.
driving. They drove from Ohio all across over to Utah, and I know that you love taking
In an
road trips
RV
too.
or just a regular old car?
Ooh, good question.
Well, we did it in a conversion van, and one of the reasons was because we stopped
Okay.
at tons of cities along the way
Yeah.
to pop into commercial storage developments.
Oh,
And
nice.
so we did a research project on the
Oh,
way
that's
and on the
So
way
cool.
back.
I'll have to think about. Well, my kids are a little bit younger, so I don't know if they're going to want to go to storage units this summer, but we're
Maybe.
already planning our summer trip because we went from Florida up to Maine in the truck, and we went
yeah.
cabin and tent camping along the way,
Oh, wow.
and it was so much fun. And my dad joined us.
Maybe-
So this summer we're probably going to maybe go through the mountains this time and do some different kind of road trip. But the kids are already talking about it. As much as they complained about sleeping in the tent, they're asking where we're going to go this summer.
Yeah.
So it was definitely it was their first experience doing that much road tripping and sleeping in tents.
Do you guys have something on the docket on your end, David, for your family?
Well, we've got a few summer trips planned, and then I try to take Kim with me on the jet. I try to take her with me when we go places, and I'm there for a couple of days, so we'll go to Key West and we'll just do a little 3-day getaway, things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, nice.
Cool.
yeah.
Well, I
It's
know
important.
Howie wanted to talk to you about some landing and some other pilot
Pilot
things.
talk.
Pilot talk.
As he gets his pilot's license.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Well, thank you again, David, for coming on the show and just sharing you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Anytime. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, you guys, we'll see you on the next episode. And remember, you're only one deal